Hello everyone, I'm Gigi Carlton Schubeck. I was Mr. Peterson's personal and executive administrative assistant for 40 years. About 20 years ago, the museum decided to have a special education program for the disadvantaged and low-income children who lived in South Los Angeles. We teamed up with the Los Angeles City School District, and we put together a program whereby we invited several hundred children to come to the museum for a day at the museum. So Mr. and Mrs. Peterson decided they wanted to be a part of this. So we arrived, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson and myself, at the museum, and were we thrilled to see so many city yellow school buses lined up on the streets outside the museum. We went into the museum and there must have been several hundred children, and they were exploring the museum. They were so excited to be there. They were excited to see the cars. And Mr. and Mrs. Peterson talked to quite a few of the children, and I happened to overhear them and asked some of these children, what was your favorite car? And the children said, of course, the Batmobile. So anyway, I think the thing that impressed the Petersons the most was that these children were getting inspired by the cars. And they thought too that by this inspiration, we hoped that children would be interested in cars and possibly a career in the future in the automotive industry. So we thought if we got one kid interested, that was a big accomplishment. The day was very exciting for the kids and for the Petersons because they were so happy and thrilled to see so many children there having such a good time. And at the end of this day, the children were invited to come and sit down in what was at the time called the Salon, which is now the Bruce Meyer Gallery, and all sit down on the floor, and they were entertained by a high school jazz trio with a music teacher who was very adept at making animal sounds on his various horn instruments, which the children loved. So the whole day was very exciting and very inspirational, and most of all, the Petersons were thrilled to see so many happy and interested children at the museum, and of course hoped that they would come back later. Another story I have to tell you about is Mr. Peterson became a millionaire in the 50s. That was a very big deal back in those days because he had started Hot Rod magazine in 1948, and it had been extremely successful. I don't know the year, but I know it was in perhaps the late 50s. Mr. Peterson finally was able to order a Ferrari. So the time came when the Ferrari headquarters advised him that his Ferrari was ready to be picked up in Italy. So Mr. Peterson flew over to Italy to get his beloved Ferrari. When he entered the premises there, I believe it was probably in Modena because now the factory is in Maranello, he was greeted by Mr. Enzo Ferrari himself. And of course, Mr. Ferrari had an interest in Mr. Peterson because he was writing the Peterson Publishing Company was writing articles about Ferraris and other exotic sports cars. So Mr. Peterson's all ready to get his Ferrari, and Mr. Enzo Ferrari says to him, hey, come on, we're gonna go out on the test track, and I'm gonna drive you around in your new Ferrari. So there was Mr. Peterson with Mr. Enzo Ferrari at the wheel, driving them around on the test track. And then Mr. Ferrari said, hey, you take the wheel now and drive the car around the track, which of course was very exciting for Mr. Peterson. And to this day, he was a great lover of Ferraris, and even when he passed away at that time in 2007, he had 7 Ferraris in his stable. I hope you enjoy your virtual gala and have fun this evening.